In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
All right. Welcome to the class. It is week 4, and we're, again, pumped about our content that we have this week. We have one of the great American educators and really one of the top minds in baseball, Nate Trosky. He's here to talk about gratitude, and one of the best traits that any human, any athlete, or anybody in any individual can possess to grow throughout life. So before we get started, to make sure that we go through the same process we have done before, is that we want to take your questions. So as you have questions for Greg or for Nate, please put them in the chat area and we'll get to them as we go. We'll try to create room at the end. But I know that we've got a lot of content to get through. We've got Nate ready to roll. Greg's ready to go. So, and now for your host of the class, Greg Moore.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to some of the new students. I've gotten a few emails saying we've got a big crew joining us. Today, we're going to go through a topic, kick around a topic, and with Nate here, we're going to really dive into what it means to be a great teammate, and then how we get there. And eventually, we'll get to that idea of the best leaders give. But what I'd like to do is make it somewhat pedestrian. I want to paint it tonight for all the middle school guys on the class or on the call, and also the high school guys. I want you to imagine, as we go through this class, I want you to imagine that you're planning middle school or you're planning to go to high school. So we're going to look at those 4 years and kind of what you want to embody. Very simple. We'll oversimplify it so we can get into leadership and giving and how that process develops. High school guys, you're going to look towards college. And as a freshman, what will I key on? Obviously, oversimplified. And those JC guys, they may be on a bus actually again this week. I want you to do the same and look at this process of becoming a great teammate and then eventually becoming one of the leaders on that team as a true process that you really have to work at. But we're going to get specific. And I'm going to give you a couple, kind of a 3-prong approach to how we're going to build this tonight. Young guys and old guys, the first thing we're going to do is key on how we give thanks. And it's just that idea of looking around proactively, like the speech said, not to see what I'm going to get out of a situation, but to see what I can give to a situation. How do we make that a habit? Flip the perspective that somehow baseball is going to give me all these things, and really just clear ourselves and say, I'm going to give to baseball. I'm going to give to my team, my teammate next to me, or I'm going to give to my family. And when we flip that perspective, I'll tell you a story soon. It really kind of opens us up to do some of the things we'll talk about in the next 3 classes, which is command mental skills. I'm going to give focus to this class. I'm going to give energy to my teammates when I get to the field today. All those things open up when we start at that base layer as players and we start to say, hey, this is pretty cool. Look what I'm doing. I'm a baseball player in high school. I'm on this team with these guys, and we start to be grateful. Do it in the house and look for all those chances for us to shake our head and go, how are we living in this paradise here? We'll have some fun at the base level. The second one is reps of giving. We'll build on top of being grateful, and we'll look for ways that we can go put a rep in that is just a rep of giving. You don't want anything back. It's not a big picture item. It's just, hey, I can make this guy better by smiling at him at the subway. and I'm going to do it. He's having a bad day, and I'm going to extend that rep of giving. Then we'll take that onto the field, and we'll get really specific with kind of how leadership grows from when you're younger to when you're older. You get to a point, and we'll hear from Derek Jeter later. He's not actually here, but we have a recorded message from him about going into the corner of the locker room and engaging somebody that you know needs to be elevated. And that's really it's a rep of giving, yes, but it's how you get specific. And Jeter will talk a little bit about that later. All right. Since I've gotten some good feedback on our graphics from the class, so get your performance journals out. And let's hit it. One of these days, I'm going to make one of these right in front of you guys. We had the circle of influence last week. These are our boxes of giving. Go ahead and draw this on your page. And then I'm going to take you through a 4-year progression in terms of going through high school or college. Remember, we're going to imagine that we're going to high school and we want to be a great teammate. We want to eventually be a leader. Go ahead and finish that graphic in your journal. Feel like I got to rush because I want to get Nate on. Selfish. I'm not in the moment, Coach Trosky. All right. So as you watch content online, you hear people talk. There's so much about development of arm speed, hip speed, foot speed, bat speed, and it is great stuff. But rarely do we look at the development as a teammate. And I want you to kind of see from a lot of years of being in college baseball, I about 6-8 years ago, I started to think, wow, it just seems like a cluster of freshmen that really figured out, put their focus here. Sophomores seem to develop this way, juniors and seniors, and you'll see how natural this progression is. But beneath your boxes, go ahead and write this in your performance journal. Top down, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. Simple stuff. As a freshman or as a new guy on any team, the key is I'm going to give to this team, right? So on that top line where it says freshman, write your team name. You're playing for the Barracudas, playing for the Dodgers. Write your team name. That freshman year, high school guys, the freshman year in college, my priority is to get in there and say, how do I become the best teammate on this team? Learn as much as I can. Go to the guys that have the system figured out, that know the signs. I'm going to see how good of a teammate I can be. Now, does that mean you won't go beat a guy out? That's separate. The NBA talks about that. They train their guys, their rookies, to come in and respect the 5-year vets, but they also say, go ahead and dive on the floor and beat them as well. Beat them out. So this has very little to do with depth charts. This is just focus in year one. How good of a teammate can I be when I get to college? How good of a teammate when I get to high school? That sophomore year, on it. This is what the development of guys is, hey, I know what the system's about, but that sophomore year, I start to figure out how to get on it on the field, and I figure out how to get on it off the field, right? I know the calendar, the schedule, the meetings. I know all this, but you start to drive those skills in both areas as far as, hey, when I'm here, I'm locked in, present, whatever you want to use, but I'm starting to execute on both sides of the ball, to use that term. Juniors, high school or college, about that time, guys really start to unleash. They get relentless, you know. They've started to do their own study, a lot of it, and hopefully you're there earlier. But traditionally, the juniors are like, man, I'm going to go seek information. I know how to bring it back and apply it, and I'm relentless with everything I do. Everything I do off the field matters on the field, and vice versa. But I'm going. I'm driving what this is. Senior year, simple, right? Simple. What does that mean? It means that you become the example. And it's because you've done it right for so long that now people are starting to look to you and say, how do I do this? Okay. Why would we go through this process or look at these years before we hear from Derek Jeter? Because no matter where you're at, middle school, high school, or already in college, it is a process. And how do we drive it? Well, we give thanks, we give to others, and then we get really specific to build that leadership. As we'll transition here in a second. We'll start talking about the reps of giving. But if we could pull up Derek Jeter and listen to his answer to what leadership is and how he did it, I think it'll paint the entire picture.
Those early years, Joe Torre, your manager, who'd been around forever as a player, as a manager with the Angels, as a manager with the Cardinals, he'd bounced around. He said that he saw veterans looking to you even in '96. Did you sense that? Did you take that on?
I don't know. I don't think you ever look at it like that. People always ask me about leadership. I was never a self-proclaimed leader. I don't walk around saying, hey, follow me, guys. I think it's, leadership is something that's defined differently by different people. Sometimes there's lead by example. Sometimes there's vocal leaders. What I've always tried to do is try to get to know the people. I think communication is the key. I think if you communicate and you're honest with people, they tend to trust you. And then if you lead by example, then they may follow you. But, I never walked around beating my chest saying I'm a leader. And I've always heard that I'm not vocal, or I wasn't a vocal leader. But I didn't do it for the cameras. When the camera's on me, I didn't pull a guy aside so everyone could see me talking to him. Now, I spoke to him, but I just did it my own way.
We want to be Derek Jeter, engage people, understand them, get to know them. It's being a good teammate, being a good leader. You never did it for the cameras. Where does that start? It starts with giving thanks and gratitude. I know it sounds kind of like we're at a holiday dinner, but I'm going to show you a couple slides, something that Coach Trosky, myself, Matt, Tony have worked on to just give students reps of gratitude and take you through that. So, Matt, if you could pull up the exercise 1. It starts with giving gratitude, being grateful for those challenges, the people, the team you're on. You got to go find that stuff. I'm going to give you a couple seconds, maybe about 30, to read this. And then on your performance journals, we're going to go through these 3 questions. Hopefully you're watching with somebody, and you can put the answer in the chat if you'd like. You get done quick. But why do you think that every study in the world, and you'll see a book here in a second, talks about how these simple acts of gratitude make you sleep better, they make you more resilient, they make you more confident. But why does expressing gratitude and being genuinely grateful lead to all these good things? Put your theory in or on your performance journal as if it was in that top box. Matt, I can't see chats coming through, but if you see any good ones, jump in. So doing things like you just did, writing something, some reflection based on that value, it just makes you clear and you start to focus on where you can be grateful. The second one, you didn't exactly do the exercise yesterday, but if you could think of one person you would like to share 1 or 2 goals with because they're important to you, that you care about them, they help you grow, who would that person be? And do me a favor, do it with somebody that's outside the room that you're in right now, so that you can kind of think outside the house and you don't make mom mad or dad mad. Now here's where it gets fun. That person that's helping you grow outside the house. You think about why you chose them, how they help you, care about you, how you care about them. But you write the 3 reasons you picked them. Let's move to the second page. Simple acts, simple ways to look down at what you're grateful for, going to make you clearer, make you a better teammate indirectly, but it all helps. What you thinking right now? I've heard that before. Go ahead and take 30 seconds and read about the book Thanks. All right, looking back, what am I grateful for? Maybe it was a big challenge in your life and it made you better, but you didn't realize it at the time. We won't go through each of these questions, but I encourage you to write them down shorthand if you need, so that you can go back and go through one of these exercises. If you were to think, as I talk, go ahead and write those. If you were to think about a way to elevate somebody else, right? We're talking about your gratitude, what you're grateful for, looking for those things. But now you move into that second part of leadership. Well, what is a rep of giving? Well, that first person you wrote about, you're going to call them and you're going to say, hey, I did this exercise tonight in this crazy class and I just thought of you. Now, what does that do? It elevates them, but it also teaches you how you do what Jeter did for so long. And then your extension of that, your challenge of that is to take that into your locker room and, and maybe in a different way, but hey, I really appreciated how you got after it today. You threw up in conditioning and I liked how you threw up in the bush and you came back and finished. That meant a lot to the whole group. That's what we're talking about with those reps of giving. Hopefully your questions are down. Hopefully you get on Amazon, order Thanks, because it's a good and powerful book. Last part, I'll keep checking the clock because I want to get them on here. Give thanks, give to others, and give to the guy in the locker room, in the corner of the locker room. This is a story, and it's something I shared a week ago in the prep notes for those of you that are getting that. About the junior year, most guys who have some footing will come in and ask you the question, how do I become a leader? They're already a very good and established teammate. They've made a study of it. But how do I elevate and lead? I want to give more to this team. And, the theoretical side is great, but when it comes down to it, it's a reflection and then it's an action. And this is something you guys can do right now. I don't care if you're a junior, but you can sit back and say, hey, who is somebody on my team that needs me? They need to pick me up. They need a pat in the butt. They need a little redirection. You start thinking like that, and that's when you start to move into that Jeter mind. He was always doing that. And maybe Coach Trosky's got some Jeter stories, but he was always looking at the new guy that just got called up, who was nervous, and he was going over to make him feel good, take him out to dinner or send him out to dinner so that he knew he was a Yankee. He knew he was one of the group. We can all do that. I don't care if you're getting to a travel team, a new travel team, and you're looking around and you see that there's some guys that are nervous, don't feel like they belong. Well, you start to give them something. You give them that rep of giving, you bring them with you. They're the guy in the corner of the locker room that needs you, or the guy in the corner of the dugout that struck out 3 times in a row that just needs a little pat. We start looking for those things, and that's how we grow our leadership. So we're going quick tonight, but I really want you to, this week, start to look for all the beautiful things in your life. Even when things feel like they're tough, man, I got 6 tests, I got all this going on. Hey, Mom, that was outstanding chicken. Thank you. Thanks for the ride. That was an hour and a half, and they enjoyed it more than you because they got to talk to you for an hour and a half. But we're going to start looking for those and expressing those ideas, because when we see it, we say it, right? You see something you can be grateful for, you say it. Start giving, look for reps to give, and then you go find that guy on your team because you're a hungry learner and you're here and you're like, man, I got some of this, but I want to keep getting better as a teammate and eventually as a leader. And over years, I think what you'll see is people will start to look to you like they look to Jeter. What's he doing? How's he doing it? But it does take years. So buckle up and build that skill. For the few that need an introduction, I'll tell you this. He didn't want me to talk about him, so I'm not going to give you his list and bio. Why I'm enamored by him is Coach Trosky and I have been coaching about the same number of years, and we went 2 different paths. He took the road less traveled. I went into college coaching, and what he did, I can't believe, because he teaches everywhere he goes, all over the country, all over the world. And every time I see a video from the bushes or through some net, he's always bringing it. He's always just like, whatever he has to give, he's giving them that day. And I see all these things posted, and I've known Coach Trosky since we were young and crazy and doing mental skills camps in the dorms, basically, of a college, trying to teach guys. But if you have never listened to Coach Trosky, I hope this is your introduction. And Nate, welcome.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Can you guys hear me okay?
I got you now.
How's the sound right now?
Oh, it's good now.
Is it good? Well, I'm in the Dominican Republic. I have my Dominican curtains behind me. Hope they're looking good. So Matt, thank you for the opportunity, Greg. Thank you so much. And I think my window's about 25 minutes. Is that right?
25 minutes isn't going to do it. So you stay on as long as you want.
Okay, but
when some people have to.
Okay. I'll kind of hone it into about 25, but guys, listeners, I want to, first thing is I want to see your faces. Beautiful. So I'm going to ask you guys right now to continue to be elite listeners, and I want to give you the 20/80 scale. I want you to write it down, the 20/80. So write down the 20/80 scale. That's the scale that you guys are evaluated on from really your whole baseball journey. The college coaches call it the 2 to 8, and we as pro scouts call it the 20/80. So 80 is like Otani, run tool, hit tool, field tool, throw tool, power tool. He's an 80. Okay. Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, power tool, 80. Barry Bonds, 80. Babe Ruth, 80. If we're talking power tool, when you want to talk about the 80 arm tool, we'll go right to Hunter Green throwing 39 pitches over 100 miles an hour, the hardest throw in the history of the world. Hunter Green. So 80 is the best. I'm going to challenge you to be an 80 learner right now and an 80 listener. And it really begins with being the great listener, and then it begins with being an 80 note taker. So as I'm speaking, I'm going to speak relatively quick. So we're going to challenge you like you're in college. And I don't want to see your faces very often, because that means you're just kind of looking at me. And so where the elite learning comes, it comes from the eyes down and writing. So I want to see those notepads filled up. And when we're done, 25 minutes in, we're going to reflect and say, was I really an 80? Because 50 is an average, and we're staying away from mediocrity. If you want to be an average player that plays according to your age or your class, I'm a sophomore and I play according to the sophomore class. Well, you're probably not going to play on the varsity team. Now you get to college baseball and you're a freshman, you're moving in and you want to have opportunities. If you play like a freshman, I'm sorry, you're not going to play. If you think like a freshman, you'll never play. So we're talking about being above our years. So let's be 80 listeners, 80 note takers. Right now, I'm in the Dominican Republic, and this is where I live now. And what they do better than anybody in the world is they give to the 5 physical tools. Greg, how's the sound right now? I just want to check in because sometimes the sound can be a little hesitant in the DR.
You're good. You're freezing a bit, but the sound is staying strong.
Okay, the sound staying strong. So I'm going to take a little bit different twist on giving, and I was informed when I was speaking tonight that I was speaking on giving. So giving, gratitude, it all comes full circle, but I'm going to hit it in a different way. And so it's going to come back and meet Greg and Matt where they were at. But I'm going to talk a little bit about really the law of mutual exchange. Let's get the pins going. The law of mutual exchange. And the law of mutual exchange is very simple. It's just like the law of gravity. The law of gravity cannot be defied, guys. You can't defy the law of gravity. What comes up must come down. And the higher you fall, the harder you land. That's gravity. So now we're talking the law of mutual exchange. The law of mutual exchange is very simple. You receive in life in proportion to what you give. Therefore, if I want to be in the business of receiving, I must be the CEO of giving. So let's just backtrack. If I want to be in the business of receiving, if I want to receive from others, if I want to receive a scholarship, if I want to receive from each of my physical tools, if I want to receive from my family, if I want to receive it anywhere in my life, the more I give, the more I receive. And you receive in proportion to what you give. So the law of mutual exchange is very, very simple. The more I give, the more I receive. Now, in the Dominican Republic, there's nobody better in the world on giving to the 5 physical tools. The 5 physical tools: run, hit, field, throw, hit for power. Those are the physical tools that you're graded on a 20/80 scale when you're entering, guys, when you're on your journey to enter college baseball or professional baseball. The 20/80 scale is what is used, and 50 is the average. So we're trying to stay away from average as much as possible. Well, in the Dominican Republic, at the age of 12, they understand that the more they give to the 5 physical tools, the more they'll receive. Now, understand that that is their focus. And that is why Dominican players at the age of 14 signed for $5 million. And it's not like 1 or 2. We're talking across the country. They signed from $500,000 to $5.5 million at the age of 14. And at the age of 16, they received that bonus. Now, it's all based on their focus. And what Greg's talking about is the focus of gratitude. Now I'm talking about the focus of anything. It's like, what do you want to be great at? And so we have to narrow our focus, because once we decide what we want to be great at, and then we prioritize it, what happens is now I will receive in proportion to what I give. So one of the questions is what are you giving your time to? And the problem that runs across the board, guys, at all ages, is we're trying to give too much in too many areas. And what great players do is they simplify their lives. They simplify their lives. Write down STC. STC is simplify the complex. Your ability to take the complexity of life and your ability to take the complexity of the game of baseball as a student, as an athlete, as a defender, as a base runner, as a hitter. Guys, there's no game like baseball in the world. There's no game that challenges you across the board on both sides of the ball with the skill of hitting, throwing, fielding, and running and hitting for power. The only sport like it is tennis. All other sports are more 1 to 2 dimensional. Baseball is 5 dimensional, plus the 6 tool. It'll challenge your mental makeup more than any other sport. So now you say, okay, I have the 5 physical. Now the Dominicans are masters, and that's why they dominate. And they're dominating the major leagues right now, nearly 30%, guys. There's only 12 million people in the Dominican Republic, and there's 355 million people in the United States of America. It's because they're focusing on what is important to them. But let me tell you, they are missing in areas because they're not completing the circle. How do we complete the circle? Now, the number one infielder right now in America, he goes to Oregon State. His name is Travis Bazzana. And Travis Bazzana, I had the opportunity to get to know a couple years ago because my nephew plays at Oregon State and he's the shortstop. Travis is the second baseman. Guys, Travis was 2-time All-American the last 2 years. He was MVP of the Cape Cod. And right now in the mock draft, he's in a position to be first round, first pick. And when I spoke to Travis about 2 months ago, I said, Travis, What you did is you prioritized your run tool. Now, guys, think of this. As a freshman, he had about 10 stolen bases. The next year, he made a priority to focus on his run season, simply priority. Guys, he went from under 10 to 38, breaking the Oregon State base stealing record because he prioritized. Then he goes, I want to have power. I want to have more power. So then he goes and hits 11 home runs, which the year before he hit under 5. How did he do it? It was all based on prioritizing. So when I was talking to Travis, guys, is a 50 fielder at best. 50. Okay. He's an 80 runner. He's about a 65 power. Okay. Hit tool, he's about a 70. These are big numbers. These are talking first round, first pick. We're talking $5 million, guys, but his defensive tool is average at best. And I told him, I said, Travis, until you prioritize your defensive tool, it will never elevate. But the goal needs to be to prioritize your defensive tool, just like you prioritize your run tool, your hit for tool, your hit tool, and your hit for power tool. So the question will be left to Travis Bazzana to what he's going to do. But the question is for you guys is, what is important to you on your journey? A player that was rewarded for giving more than anybody was Royce Lewis. And Royce Lewis was first round, first pick. I had the opportunity to coach him for 2 seasons. And he took the job of Carlos Correa 2 years ago when Carlos got hurt. He was brought up to the big leagues at the age of 22 and a half, going into 23. And he's replacing one of the best players the game has seen, Carlos Correa. And Royce Lewis, I've never seen a player in 30 years prepare better than Royce Lewis. Never seen a player prepare better. He is the CEO of the Rat Nation. And when the Minnesota Twins saw him prepare before his high school game, guys, I saw him for 7 days, 2 times, because the area code games are 7 days for 2 years. That's 14 games. Guys, he did not vary one time. When the Minnesota Twins watched him prepare before his high school game, they said, this is our first round, first pick solely because of how he prepared. How he prepared. And when I watched Royce prepare for those 14 days, I've never seen anything like it. And I want you to write down the acronym. Write down the acronym ICAD. ICAD is intensity, consistency, and attention to detail. And so when you watched him prepare, when he stretched, when he played catch, when he did his pre-game drill work with his glove, when he did his swings before the game, whatever he did, guys, he had a level of intensity, consistency, and attention to detail that did not vary for the 14 days that I saw him. And the Hall of Fame manager, Jim Leland, this is what he said about Royce Lewis, guys. He said, Royce Lewis is a player that you can count on, and he deserves first round, first pick because he sleeps well and he eats well. He's a player that you will count on for 20 years in the major leagues. Guys, very few players sleep well and eat well because they're so caught up in consuming in and being cool and going out and being someone that fits in with the crowd, traveling the road most traveled. Royce Lewis, rewarded for prioritizing. And by the way, Royce Lewis, a tremendous person. And to complete the circle, guys, the circle, how do we complete this circle? It's the person, the player, and the athlete. And with Royce Lewis, we're talking about all components. This weekend, I was in Arizona and I had the opportunity to work with a guy named TJ Beam. And TJ was one of the coaches with Trosky, Arizona. And I'm talking about Modita. You guys write that down, Modita. And Modita is a Chinese word, okay, that captures the concept of celebrating in others, okay, other people's victories, celebrating in the successes of others. And so we had 60 players there at this boot camp, guys, and we're working out. And I didn't see any Modita. Guys, these guys are all quality high school players and quality middle school players, but they're so consumed with themselves, guys. What that creates is tension. And by the way, the Dominican player, guys, plays with Modita. They focus on their teammates. And why do you think there's so many when you watch the World Series, guys? Because they celebrate with their teammates and with their teammates' successes. It's about taking the focus off of yourself, which releases tension. It creates order, guys, an order. Think of your body sequence of dominoes. And when you set the first domino up, all begins well, that starts well. So if the first domino is in order and I hit that domino and it starts to move and flow, but if there's one domino out of order, the sequence is out of order, and it ultimately affects the result of the sequence, which is when I swing the bat, when I throw the ball, when I field the ball. It's nothing but a sequence. So if I want the result, I must be in flow. How do I find that flow? Well, one way is to have modita, constantly picking up your teammates, constantly picking up those around you. Now, TJ Beam, this is what he said. I said, TJ, you were in the bullpen with Mariano Rivera, the greatest of all time, guys, the greatest of all time, the greatest of all time. He's in the bullpen as a rookie with Mariano. Okay, and he's in there, and I go, I have a story about Mariano. Can you tell me if this is truly who Mariano is? And I said, my good friend, he was working on our ranch in Big Sur, California, and he goes, Nate, I can't work this weekend. I'm heading to Florida to go to Mariano's farewell dinner. There's 20 people invited, guys. Out of all the people that Mariano knows, he invites 20 people. I was invited with his wife because his grandparents practically raised Mariano when he came from Panama. Okay, so when the dinner's over, nobody can find Mariano. Where is he? Where is Mariano Rivera? They all want to say thank you. So they're looking around. Where's Mariano? Mariano is in the kitchen, mopping the floors. Get your mind right. Mopping the floors. The king, the servant, mopping the floors. That's the street sweeper. When it's your time in life and you're called to sweep the streets like Michelangelo painted paintings. Sweep the streets like Beethoven composed music. Mariano, the king, is in the back mopping floors, doing dishes. The king, it's his farewell dinner for saying adios to the big leagues and welcome to the Hall of Fame, guys. And he said, absolutely, Mariano's the greatest human being of all time. But he said, you know who else is the greatest human being I've ever been around? Is Derek Jeter. Derek was his shortstop, guys. So what we're doing is we're seeing a common theme here. The all-time greats are all-time great humans, and that's the person. So we go from Mariano, the greatest of all time. Derek Jeter arguably is the greatest position player of all time. Well, now you go to the bench, Joe Torre, and he goes, man, and Torre, but he goes, that whole team was ridiculous. He said, Joe Torre, when I went into the clubhouse, Joe said, hey, TJ, if you don't have a room tonight, I want you to know that me and my wife will put you up. We'll put you up in our house. To a nobody. To a nobody. The manager of the Yankees. The best of the best of the best of the best. Now, those are three guys of the best of the best of the best. And what you see this common theme. Now, right now for the Chicago Cubs, there's a guy named Nico Horner. Okay, Nico Horner is from Northern California. Greg knows of Nico. Matt does as well. Now, Nico Horner, I want you to think of this, guys. When he was 12 years old, I had the opportunity to coach him in Cary, North Carolina. And when I stepped foot on the field, guys, you could feel Nico. I want you to write down the acronym YTB. YTB is you're the best. You're the best. And then I want you to write down the acronym WTB. We're the best. And I want you to write down the acronym ITB. I'm the best. And Nico is all about making people feel like they are the best. So when he's with the team together, it's all about we're the best. And when he's around you, you're the best. And when he's self-talking to himself, I'm the best. Guys, he has this frequency that I've never seen. And he was 12 years old, and we all knew that Nico will be a major leaguer. Every single guy, like, that's a big leaguer. If that guy don't play in the big leagues, who's going to play? Nobody's playing in the big leagues. Now check this out. His senior year, he comes and plays for Trosky baseball. And he was an average defender. He's committed to Stanford. Now, he's not an average person. Okay? He's one of the greatest of all time. Okay? He doesn't have an average tool set. He's physically not average. But as a defender, as a shortstop, when I saw him, that's my expertise. I go, he's an average defender. I didn't say he didn't make all the plays, but his skill level. Now check this out. He goes to Stanford University. He signs in the first round for over $5 million, and he's in the major leagues in 1 year. He's in the major leagues. His first game, he goes like 5 for 5, and that year he's clubhouse player of the year. And this year he was a Gold Glove winner. How do you go from an average defender to gold? How do you do that? It's all based on his spirit, guys. His spirit. I want to give you 4 stories about Nico, and I'm going to wrap it up. Nico Horner, guys, I'm telling you, is the best. And when you're on the field with Nico, you always believe that you will win. And that's what all the teammates say. When Nico's on the field, we win. We cannot lose because Nico won't let us lose because he believes in us, he believes in the team, and he believes in himself. So I talked to Scott Pickler last week. I'm talking to him. He's a manager in the Cape. He's one of the legendary college coaches from California, Scott Pickler. He's been in the Cape for many years. I said, Scott, do you got any openings? And I'm telling him about this specific player. And he says, that guy sounds like Nico Horner. And I said, you coach Nico? He said, man, Nico, he's the greatest. And I said, I coach Nico, he's the greatest. And I said, Dave Esker at Stanford says he's the greatest. Okay, now check this out. He goes, man, when Nico played for me, there was never a guy, this guy's like 75, guys, Scott Pickler. He goes, I've never had a player in my life strike out and have scouts like rushing the dugout on a strikeout. And they're just coming in and they're showing me the stopwatch. Nico ran a 4.1 on a strikeout on a curveball in the dirt. And nobody does that. Because Nico is always at his best, always giving his best because it's all about nothing but the best. That's Nico Horner. Now watching the wild card run this year, guys, the Cubs are in the wild card race. Nico Horner's at first base. There's one out. There's a pop-up in the infield. And where does Nico end up? Scores. Nico scores on a pop-up in the infield. I don't know if that's ever been done in my lifetime. Nico Horner scores on a pop-up from first base in the infield. And you talk about energy. Guys, the dugout erupted, the fans going ballistic because Nico gives his best at all time. And we're talking about giving, we're talking about gratitude. Nico Horner cannot be, okay? Nobody could put Nico in the backseat, nobody. So talking to Dave Esker at Stanford University, we're talking about Nico. He said, I got a story about Nico. He said, I've never seen this in over 20 years of Pac-12 baseball. And I also was a College World Series winner, by the way, at Stanford University. I've never seen this. Nico Horner. Every time Nico grounds out to the shortstop, guys, every time the shortstop, the third base, to second base, he's always a 4-1. And by the way, before the next pitch is pitched, that's within 20 seconds, Nico's helmet is in the helmet rack, the bat is in the bat rack. Nico is standing on the top step of the sunken diamond, guys, cheering on his teammate. Let's go. Get a good pitch to hit. Let's go. Nico Horner, it's all about his teammates, never about himself. Guys, first of all, every time he grounds out, strike out in the dirt, he's still a 4-1. And he's the first guy back in the dugout on the top step, giving it to his teammates, building that frequency, taking the focus off of himself and giving it back to his teammates. Last story. My good buddy was a scout for the Kansas City Royals. It was the first week of the Pac-12. He's watching the game. Nico grounds out to the pitcher. Boom! Busting 4-1. And guys, none of these stories, nobody knows the same guy. Nobody. This isn't like we all got on the phone and we're all talking. Okay, this is me collaborating over 8 years about Nico Horner. Okay, now check this out. Okay, comebacker to the pitcher, 4-1. By the way, guys, he knows he's going to be a big leaguer and he knows he's going to be a first rounder. And he's still nothing but the best, and it's all about my team. Now check this out. They're in the regional now. Okay, now wait, let's backtrack. That scout, okay, he put in his notes and he sent it to the scouting director. This guy, Nico Horner, needs to be watched. Okay. And he says, I've never seen a guy run a 4-1 on a comebacker to a pitcher. And let me tell you what the scouting director said. So what? So what? He goes, can he hit? Does he got power? I don't care. I don't care if he hustles. Well, let's take it a step further. They're in the regional, guys. It's 2 outs. They're down by 1. Nico Horner hits a comebacker, the exact same play. The scout is in the stands. He times him again. He gets a 4-1, and what do you think the pitcher does? throws it in right field. Nico Horner's on third base, scores on the ball in the dirt. They tie the game and they go up and win the game. Nico Horner. And by the way, guys, those stories are real. And those stories don't change because he's doing the same thing in the big leagues. The same thing. So I'm going to finish with this story. My grandfather, Hal Trosky, he's the greatest rookie of all time. In 1936, he was on the cover of Wheaties cereal. He had 142 RBIs, he batted .343, and he hit 42 home runs. He was only 23 years old, guys. 23 years old. He's still the greatest rookie of all time. Now, Wheaties put him on the box of Wheaties cereal. And by the way, Michael Jordan's mother said that's the greatest accomplishment Michael ever accomplished was being on Wheaties. And she said, when I walked down the grocery store aisle, that was the greatest joy that I ever experienced, was seeing my son on the box of Wheaties cereal. Well, my grandfather was on Wheaties cereal in 1936. And so when the season was over, guys, it was during the Great Depression, 1936, the whole country was starving. It was one of the lowest times of our country, okay? And my grandfather was at the farm in Iowa, and the Wheaties truck comes to the farm and delivers over 1,000 boxes of cereal because he got a case of cereal for every home run he hit. He hit 42. That's over 1,000 boxes of cereal. And so at my father's brother, also a major leaguer, Hal Jr., and my father's brother and his sister, they got into the truck and they loaded up those thousands of boxes, guys, and they went out and they fed people of need. He was a giver. Back to Iowa today, nobody cares about how he hit. Nobody cares about his rookie numbers. Nobody cares about anything other than your grandfather was one of the greatest givers of all time. One of the greatest givers of all time. And by the way, when Greg Moore was at the University of San Francisco, I never forget it. They said, nobody cares 3 years later when you complete your college career. Nobody cares your numbers. Nobody's. All they care about is the type of person you were. And so my grandfather is known today for being a giver. And I want you to think of this. How much are you willing to give and how much are you willing to give up? And I want you to write this down. I want you to write this down. How much am I willing to give? How much am I willing to give up to receive and achieve what's important to me? That will define you. How much am I willing to give? Because the more you give, the more you receive. The law of mutual exchange, you receive in proportion to how much you give. So if I give a lot to my backhand, I get a lot from my backhand. If I give a lot to my forehand, I get a lot from my forehand. If I give a lot to hitting breaking balls, what happens? I rake breaking balls. If I give a lot to throwing breaking balls, I'll have a plus bender. Travis Bazzana is the best bunter, guys. I told you of Travis. He's looking to go 1-1 this year in the draft. Travis Bazzana is the best bunter right now, arguably, in the world. Guys, he gets like 15 drag bunts a year. Why is Travis Bazzana the greatest drag bunter right now in college baseball, if not in the world? Why? Well, I asked him. And I said, Travis, how did you do this? Because he prioritized. He said, when I was 9, 10, 11, 12, what I did was I got a stick and I taped a Dixie cup on the end of the stick in Australia, Sydney, Australia, where he lived. And my dad had these little golf wiffle balls. And I would sit in the living room and just catch them. He did it for years. The more you give, the more you receive. So the question is how much do you want to receive? In which areas do you want to receive? And if I want to receive from my coach, if I want to receive from my teammates, if I want to receive in the stat box, if I want to receive in metrics, I must be the best giver of all time. And once that becomes your priority, then the last component is how much am I willing to give up? It's not just giving. I can't continue to give if I don't give up in areas of my life because there's only so much time. And I had the opportunity 2 weeks ago to work with the shortstop who just signed for $288 million, Bobby Witt Jr. And by the way, it's a $390 million contract, guys, because he has a 3-year extension. So basically it's $400 million. And Bobby Witt Jr., guys, when we talk about words, the power of words, the power of intentions, guys, Bobby's word is simple. I want you to write it down. Simple. And about 3 years ago, I came up with this wristband called Simple. And I didn't know Bobby's word was simple. And the reason is because the masters of whatever it is, it doesn't matter if it's tennis, it doesn't matter if you're a teacher, it doesn't matter if you're a garbage man, it doesn't matter if you're a baseball player. The masters simplify the complex. And Bobby says, my mind is right when my life and my mind is simple. And I said, Bobby, I know you didn't know this, but in my bag, I have simple wristbands. And they're white, they're simple. He said, are you kidding me? And by the way, he texted me about 4 days ago before he signed his contract. And all I saw in the text message was a picture of his wristband. Simple. Guys, simplify your life and prioritize, guys, giving, because the more you give, the more you receive. And I'll tell you right now, if you have too much on your plate, guys, if you have too much on your plate, okay, simplify, start to cut back in areas of your life. And the great Kobe Bryant said, edit your life. EYL, edit your life. It's time right now, tonight, to start editing your life so you can make your priorities that need to be a priority.
Nate, I got one question for you, and and it relates to what you just talked about. And then I'm going to see if any other questions. Do you have a few more minutes?
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, my son is sleeping, so I'm good.
Okay. Well, that was about 30 minutes of thunder right there. How do you give everywhere you go? What fuels you?
Well, I really, guys, I didn't know this as a player. I didn't know this probably into my 30s, maybe 40s, but I'll give you an example. Humberto Gatica is the greatest music producer of all time. He has over 20 Grammys. He was with Michael Jackson, Celine Dion, Michael Bublé. Guys, he has millions and millions of dollars, and he's won more Grammys than anybody. He produced We Are the World, one of the most famous songs of all time. Well, his son was on my team, Trosky team, Southern California, and I stayed at his house in Beverly Hills. And I want you to understand this, guys. He is the greatest, guys. He worked with Michael Jackson. He worked with all the best. Okay. Now I want you to think of this. Okay. So Hunter Green signed for $7.3 million. Okay. Hunter Green. Now Hunter Green was first round second pick. Royce Lewis was first round first pick. They were both on our team, our Milwaukee Brewers area code team. I had opportunity to coach these guys for 2 years. Royce Lewis was the highest paid player in the history of the draft for 7.2. But his teammate, Hunter Green, goes second pick and signs for 7.3. So now Hunter Green is, for the last several years, he's the highest paid high school drafted player in the history of the draft. Well, Spencer Torkelson came along and signed for 8.4 million. Okay, so he jumped Hunter, but here's the point. Hunter was the best of the best of the best of the best. Humberto Gatica is the best of the best of the best of the best. And I'm giving you two more examples of the best of the best. Now check this out. Hunter Green, when I was in Southern California at that moment, Hunter Green calls me up and he says, Nate, I have a present for you because I just signed for 7.3 million. And what he did was he was sponsored by Marucci. And what he did was he took the Marucci bats and every scout that impacted or influenced him. And I was the guy that found him actually when he was in 9th grade. And he wrote a paragraph, beautifully written, a full paragraph on the barrel. Coach Trosky, I remember when you met me in 8th grade. Thank you for taking your time. Nothing but gratitude, guys. Nothing. Every single scout, he went out of his way. Okay. Now, by the way, I had that bat at Gatica's house that night because I was sleeping there, and I had the bat because I was down there in Southern California working with the Milwaukee Brewers. And that bat was in my room. Now, check this out. Now, I want you to understand, Humberto Gatica, guys, is the greatest. Okay. He has it's like a $25 million house in Beverly Hills. Muhammad Ali's house was next door. The Simpsons, you know, The Simpsons, the show, the guy who did the voice for Bart, his house was right next to it. I mean, it was ridiculous, this neighborhood. Okay, now check it out. At 12 o'clock, he was supposed to come back at lunchtime to meet me and say goodbye. He could not. He ran out of time. I go back to the house to get my stuff. I leave Hunter Green's bat in the room by accident. And at the doorstep is a handwritten note from Humberto Gatica, the greatest. It said, Nate, I am so sorry I cannot see you off. I love you, brother. It was so awesome to meet you, and I hope to see you soon, Humberto. Guys, he wrote with a crayon on a piece of paper, and he taped it on his $20 million mansion because he cared about me. He cared about me and nobody. Now check it out. And by the way, he set Hunter Green's bat right next to the door of the other great who went out of his way. And I'm going, dude, this is but then the whole theme, guys, Derek Jeter, Mariano, I could just go on forever. It's like the best of the best of the best, guys. They are the person, they're 80s. And so when I started to realize that, Greg, and I started to realize that everything is based on giving. So I just try to give at all times. So even at my camp, so like at camp, you know, I teach for 8 hours a day, and I bring the juice the whole time. Right? There's no like, oh, I'm working with 7-year-olds. No, I treat the 7-year-old like Bobby Witt Jr. It doesn't make any difference. Okay, they're all Hall of Famers to me. Okay, so when we go to lunch, I usually don't even eat lunch because I like to go around, and we usually average 100 campers at camp, and I go around and I just say thank you, and I want to talk to these kids and see what they're eating for lunch, and hey, how about a grape? And I like to take some of their lunch too, because some of the kids have some broccoli and some grapes. It's pretty rare, but I like to get some good stuff too. So hey, you mind sharing some grapes with me, Billy? It's great having you. So really, it's that connecting, and I learned this from Jerry Manuel too. Jerry Manuel, World Series manager from Northern California. He said, he says the way you get to a heart of a player is not through X's and O's. Period. Guys, it's not about strategy. It has nothing to do. Guys, the best coaches and managers get to the heart of people. And when I read that like 15 years ago, that kind of led into it, just opened the whole world. And you start seeing that it doesn't even matter about me. Stanford did a study, guys. They had like 500 applicants, 500 applicants, guys, to get the CEO job of the hospital. And they got 5. They narrowed to 5. And they go, how are we going to choose? Because they're all legit. And all they did was this. They said, hey, they got him behind closed doors. And they said, who knows the name of the janitor of your last job? And there was only one guy. And he says his name was Jose Garcia. And that guy got the job of CEO because he cared about the least. And I'm telling you, it doesn't change. Make it your priority. Get uncomfortable, guys. Get uncomfortable because there's no growth in the comfort zone. Get uncomfortable and grow.
Guys, Nate does what I know you hear from coaches. And I love watching it because his example is something to learn from. He quoted a speech by Martin Luther King, even if it calls your luck to be a street sweeper, going out and sweep streets like mine. It's one of the great, most underrated speeches, but it's just about doing your job well. Bill Belichick could have said the same thing, but Martin Luther King says it, and it's poetry. But Nate's called to do this, and we're called to do what we do. And I think if we can learn anything from Nate tonight, aside from the stories and the wisdom beneath the stories, it's whether they're 15, 14, or 25 in the big leagues, he's just doing his job as well as he can every day. And that simplicity, that core of what Nate said about, hey, it's the simplest answer, the best simplify. It really is that simple. Coach said to do it. I'm going to see how well I can do it. My boss said to do it. I'm going to see how well I can do it. And Nate, I thank you for doing this. I didn't know what we would hit, but just listening to you, you've given us some fuel for next week as well.
Go, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Thanks, man. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for all you guys that tuned in and took some time, and all the best. STC, simplify the complex, and I'll leave you with another acronym. Let's get the pens going, guys. TMT, TMT. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And so let's identify the main thing. The main thing tonight is gratitude, it's giving. And the more you give, the more you receive. So identify where you want to receive in your life as a player, as a person, as a student, guys, and start to watch the abundance flow when you start to simplify your life and focus on priorities. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it so much. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Big Greg. I call Greg. I'm the only one that calls Greg Big Greg.
Big Nate.
Now we got Big Matt. We got Big Matt. Get your mind right, Big Matt. Let's go.
Have some fun in the DR, Big Nate. Enjoy your son.